Rockford area businesses say they feel optimistic about the outlook of the region's economy, according to a survey done by the Greater Rockford Chamber of Commerce. The chamber's CEO tells WIFR reporter Alyssa Kelly the results of its survey will help them lead business growth in the region.
The chamber is known as the voice of business. I thought, how can we represent the voice of business if we don't first get the collective voice and sentiment of the community pulled together and understood and analyzed?
The Greater Rockford Chamber of Commerce conducted its first quarterly business sentiment survey, revealing a promising year ahead. Nearly 90% of businesses plan to maintain or increase their investment, and most anticipate revenue growth or stability.
That might be, investing in a new location, or investing in capital equipment, or investing in new staff. All those things that say our revenue is up, our customers want more of our goods and services, and therefore we're going to make the investments that allow us to deliver and grow.
Chamber CEO Angela K. Larson notes the impact it can have on area residents, with 45% of survey respondents planning to increase staffing in the next year.
That says there are jobs out there, there are good jobs, jobs with great wages.
Larson explains now the chamber gets a better understanding about the feelings of area businesses, so the next step is to turn sentiments into actions.
It's pretty exciting that the optimism is there.
Since I've lived here, I moved here in 2010, it's massively different. I spend most of my time downtown, and downtown is massively different. And I would like to see it keep filling up because there's still a lot of empty stuff.
Laura Gomel with 317 Art Collective says she feels she's in a good place, explaining the growth will bring in more talents.
I feel really good about the whole thing. It's just keep moving forward.
In Rockford, Alyssa Kelly, WIFR News.
The chamber notes local results are compared to national responses gathered by the United States Chamber. This will show how the local sentiment matches up to the national sentiment.